Hello folks, how are you doing today? Welcome to this, the first of our live streams for the community about what's happening in FME 2023. Hopefully you can hear us all okay, and with me today is SAFE co-founder Dale.
Hey, thanks for having me, Mark. And I didn't realize I was part of the kickoff crew here, that this is the first of the season.
It is, yeah. We thought I thought you'd be a good one to experiment with. You wouldn't if something went wrong, you'd be quite calm about it. I thought so. That's all good.
Yes. Wow, the season opener.
Yes.
Or maybe this is more like an exhibition game, really.
Yeah, you could say that. It's sort of not really pre-season, but season opener. So if someone could just chat in the comments, just to make sure you can actually hear us. Because that would be really bad if you couldn't.
Because it's the compelling dialogue that we have worked up.
It is, yeah.
Mark and I have been working on our lines for several weeks.
Oh, several minutes at least.
So is the response overwhelming there, Mark?
Response, okay, it's a bit low sound, but they can increase it. So we should be okay. I'll perhaps turn you up a bit and maybe my microphone up a bit.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm not in my recording studio at home, so I'm in the Crystal Gondola here at Safe Software.
Oh wow, okay. Well, we're getting people streaming in, so at least several. So let's introduce what we're going to talk about today, which is attribute types, data types, the attribute manager. I think we'll touch on, and schema and what this all means for schema in the future. So
it feels like we should have a catchy title for this, Mark, like "Not My Type," something like that.
Very good. Yes. Now my brain's going to start wiring for the next half hour about what we should have called it. But
well, we can do that. Maybe as part of the playoffs at the end of the season. Are you going to have playoffs, Mark?
Probably not. No, I don't think it'll come to that. You never know. Yeah. If you want to go up against one of the other presentations in the playoff, then that'd be
well, I know I've actually seen Mark's list, and it's going to be a great run of things. And so thanks everybody for tuning in. FME 2023 is an enormous step forward again for us, and it's been brewing for quite a long time. I think more than a year ago, the code stream would have branched. So of course, we're very excited to be getting it into people's hands, but a lot of foundational improvements, a lot of things we wanted to do for a very long time. And it's exciting to show a little piece of that. I was looking back, and I think I started working on the description of the functionality that we're showing today back in 2019. So this is in many ways, it's actually longer than that. It's more like a 4 or 5 year project that's coming to fruition, where we built different pieces leading up to where we are today. So should I just walk into kind of the background here?
Go straight into it, yeah.
I got some slides prepped, and I'll start off by tipping my hat to former product manager and longtime SAFE staffer, not with us anymore, but miss her deeply, and that's Annabelle Glass, who came up with this idea of FME Brain. And I don't know what she exactly meant by it. I'm going to take her concept, and we're going to run with FME Brain a little bit here today. But the idea of FME Brain is that it's very helpful in general to get a good mental model to understand how the tool you're using thinks about things and how it works. And Annabelle referred to that as FME Brain. And I'm suggesting there's a handful of things in FME Brain that are helpful to be aware of. And one of them is around data types. That's a little tiny part of the frontal lobe, perhaps somewhere. And we're going to dig into that today. So specifically, and I'm going way deep all of a sudden here, when we think about data flowing from where it is to where you want it to be, we go through FME, through this generic pipeline processor thing that many of us know and love, and something has to happen to that data on the way through. And so I've shown here, really, there's two halves of FME Brain with respect to data types to wrap your mind around, your brain around. And one half is the internal data transport, to recognize and understand that the programmers that sit on the 11th floor and in Saskatoon or wherever they are across Canada, and they have over the last 30 years made decisions when they read data from somewhere, they're going to do something with that internal to FME to make sure it gets from where it started to where it needs to go without loss. And to some degree, as a user of FME, which I am now, I no longer get the program, or Mark is, we shouldn't give a hoot about that internal data transport. We don't care what choice that Kevin Weeb or a young Dale Lutz or young Don Murray, we don't really care what they made. And so they've chosen to read whatever it is. They've chosen to give the characteristics of that data names. We call those attributes. They've chosen to expose some of them so that we see them on the canvas and we know what they are and we can work with them. And they've chosen to leave some hidden. They're floating through, but if you don't care about them, you don't need to see them. And those are the so-called unexposed attributes. And so that's what's going on. Data is kind of coming through. And for every attribute, we chose some way to store it. If you went back to really from about 1994 until 2007-ish, we said everything is a string. We don't care if it was a number. We're going to represent it as a string of characters because it's just simpler to imagine everything being one data type. And we, under no circumstances, wanted our customers to have to care about that. There's enough going on in FME that you shouldn't need to worry if you happen to have somebody typed into a character field 1, 2, 3, and you wanted to add the number 1 to that, 1, 2, 3 plus 1, we'll just figure it out and make it into 124. So that type conversion is all hidden from you. But around 2007, we decided, you know what? Sometimes there are reasons why it might be nicer to store a number actually in the computer binary of a number. And so we began to have different transport types. And unfortunately, those leak through and you see them, and I think they might mislead you. You shouldn't care about them. Really, they're not useful to anybody that doesn't work on the 11th floor of Saskatoon from SAFE. The other thing about the internal data transport is there is no concept of data order. We just throw them all in a bag. There's no column that's first or second or third. Internally inside FME, it's just a collection of things. And when we show what's in our bag, we often just sort that alphabetically to be a little less annoying than random. So that's internally. However, there's also part of your FME brain which has to think about the external data model, and that is the explicit schema that's there. On the reading side, we'll show that on the table definitions. On the writing side, we also will show that, and there the order does matter. As the British speaker would say, order, doesn't matter. That was my little throw-in for you there, Mark.
Thank you. I got it. I got the joke.
Okay. It's very, very, I'm sure the audience at home is roaring with laughter. Can you tell from the stream?
I can't, no, but...
Well, that's probably best.
Yes, it is, yes.
But the other part of the external data model that is actually very relevant to an FME user is what the heck are the storage types, the data types, what are they going to be used when the data is written to the destination system? And you can control that in FME. In fact, you do control that in FME. And then the question is how and what is going to be stored. And that's a separate thing from how it's carried through, but that's where we really wanted to set you up so that storage stuff is much, much easier. So that's the FME brain, the two parts to it. And so why are we like that? Well, the internal part, the orange part, is a system agnostic internal data pipeline. And as I say here, FME gets to decide the best way, really the programmers do, to get from A to B. And you should never care. Don't care.
Yeah.
If you see it, try to ignore it. The other part of the brain is the source or destination systems data model, and you decide what you want there. You can also import a destination data model. If you're writing to an existing Oracle table, you want to harvest that data model and slap that into your canvas, and then you map things up and connect to that. If you're just going to green fields, then you can name things whatever you want and write to that. And the source data model is really only used for reference. The thing that's on the left-hand side is just to kind of let you know, okay, well, that was in Oracle as a character of size 8, but you and I both know, Mark, that it really was supposed to be an integer. So maybe we'll just write that out as an integer on the other side, and FME will look after the conversion, and then our Oracle users will be happy when the data types are correct. So that's kind of what's going on there. The feature information window is solidly in the orange brain of FME land. So that is FME Brain, FME internals. And I've got here a snapshot of the feature information window. It's showing all the attributes. In FME 2023, we cleaned this thing up a little bit. It used to show the types in brackets, so they were hitting you on the head. And really, you should never have cared. I mean, that was really more for the developers at SAFE, not for users. And especially now that we're letting you set data types on the canvas, the next thing you know, those types you see here don't match, and you say, doesn't work, and you're unhappy, and we don't want that. So we're trying to hide it.
Sorry, so that was more what we thought the data type should be, rather than what the user would have specified, or that will be our okay.
That's our choice, you know, for whatever choice we made when we read things. Like a lot of times, actually, if we were reading an old ASCII file format, maybe written by Fortran, all the numbers in there are just character strings. And even if we know darn well it's a number, we actually often made the choice, you know what, we're not going to go to the effort of converting this into a computer number. We'll leave it as a string, because there's a very good chance that you actually aren't going to write it out, in which case we've wasted effort, or you're going to write it out as a character string anyway. So we try to be lazy, and as a result, you might see things in here that are character strings, like this one here, whatever it's covering says it's well, it's actually FME geometry. It's a string, and it tells me the encoding. It's in US ASCII. A lot of stuff is in UTF-8 now in FME. Also, when you see, so you see the internal way we're ferrying it around, and you can see that when you hover. If you're in the feature information window and just hover, you'll see these popping up. And unless you're working at SAFE, you probably shouldn't care normally what's in there. So that's feature information window. The logger is also very much FME internal brain thinking. Okay. So it's orange. And when you log, you see the attribute names, the attribute types are in the log. And you can see in my case, these are overwhelmingly UTF-8. There's one here that's an integer. The sewer unit, for some reason, was an integer. But you see, there's an example. Sewer star says 1996. I'm thinking that should have maybe been sewer start or something. And I might naively say, you know what, that's an integer. But for whatever reason, the system we're coming from had that as a UTF-8 string. And so we're saying fine. But if you wanted to write it out as an integer, you could knock yourself out with that. And maybe we'll even try that.
Even a date, maybe.
Yes, that's right. That's right. You can see another one here, like the second R1. It looks like the shapefile's influence is strong in this one.
I was thinking, you can tell that came from shape. Even without it saying shapefile in there, you could tell.
Yeah. So anyway, that's the log. So the log, again, is the internal stuff.
Okay.
The destination feature type, though, is where the blue brain comes out. And here we see I'm in automatic mode, which we'll get to in a minute, but I'm getting to see I'm writing to KML, and all these are in, basically going out to KML, and I've got various widths and so on being shown, and this is what it'll be. It's an automatic mode, which means we'll get into that in a minute. If we change stuff in the workspace, it'll reflect in here. So that's that. You can be in manual mode, and then these are hard-coded, and you fix them the way you want. If you are writing to a true database schema that your friend has defined, probably you want to stick in manual mode so that you are honoring whatever their table definitions were. And if you're really adventurous, you can try dynamic mode. And if Mark doesn't cut me off, I actually didn't ask you, how much time do we have today, Mark?
Well, I mean, as long as you like, really. I mean, I set it for half an hour for external people, but I said that we'd probably talk a lot longer than that. So,
okay, I'm almost on my monologue.
Okay.
But anyway, if we have time, we may flirt with dynamic mode. I figured it out this morning, Mark. So,
okay.
I'm so excited by that. If I can remember, I have to just wrap my mind around it. It's a little tricky, but we can do it.
Oh, yeah, dynamic's fun.
It's fun. Yeah, so the point that we want to say is that the future of FME is to be more and more and more in automatic mode. And I don't know, Mark, if you had a chance to play with this or not yet, but it's delightful when things are in automatic mode, I find. What about you?
I go back and forwards on that because when I'm generating a workspace, often I want to have a little bit more control on the output. But I guess I should be moving that control further up the chain into an attribute manager. That would be
Yes.
best
I mean,
practice. Yeah.
I think so, yes. The disadvantage of automatic mode is if you got it all going and you like it and you say, oh, I needed to do a little bit of work down here somewhere, and you generate a couple of throwaway attributes, then they're going to show up in your output.
Yeah. That can be an issue. Yeah.
That's annoying. On the other hand, if you're generating attributes you love, then they're automatically there and you're happy. So it just depends, are you a messy kind of person that leaves junk everywhere, or are you neat and tidy? But there's another good advantage of automatic mode, and I'll show that, and that is if you're going to multiple output things, because all of a sudden then it's easy to keep stuff in sync. And then, so if you are writing to two things at once, then automatic is pretty hard to turn down.
Yeah, there's comments. Somebody said, attribute remover, attribute keeper, right before the writer, just works perfectly. Or attribute manager.
That's well, actually, that's, I actually like that. As I was just talking to Harbinder, one of the authors of the Attribute Manager, ahead of coming in here, and I think there's basically Attribute Manager can do everything, including the kitchen sink. Yeah. And I love that user's comment, because I actually think, as I reflect on this, using an attribute keeper prior to an attribute manager, use the keeper to kind of ensure that if you add a mess upstream, it won't hit your output, and then use the attribute manager in the all new way to deal with type and order. And now you got, I think, the best of both worlds. I've not thought of that, but that's a great
That's
thing.
A good one. It's funny. I remember when we built the attribute manager, we were like, okay, well, we can get rid of all the other attribute transformers now, but they still have their place.
Yes, I think the 1-2 punch is very good. So I've shown the full brain here because attribute manager is kind of where the two brains meet, and you can kind of deal with that transition from the internal FME land to the external, and that's what I would encourage people. And we have this fancy import button that we can use. So demo time, Mark.
Excellent.
Whoa. Now I got to find my workbench. There it is. And I'm going to look over here because I will reveal to everybody I do have a cheat workbench here. And I'm going to try to make the work from scratch. So I'm going to show an example where this comes in handy, and that often happens when you're dealing with web services. So I'm going to go out to my favorite Trello, and I got to get a creator going to initiate things. And with any luck, yes, there's a Trello connection here. I'm going to list all the cards on this board. And so I got to find the board I want. 5 product management buckets. Sounds like a useful thing for me to list. And there we go. I'm going to leave the list blank, which means it'll get everything. And down here, it's going to add a bunch of attributes. Good on it. And off I go. And I will now run this. And with any luck, I have a bunch of things that came out. And so here we go. And I'll just give myself a little more view. Here we go. And this is the all new thing. And so if I start flipping through here, I can see that I've got a variety of different names. And the rest of these are largely just sort of internal attributes. And so these are what they're named. And if I stop and hover, can you see the thing there, Mark? It's a UTF-8
I can.
string.
It says string UTF-8. Yeah.
Yeah. Creation instance, on the other hand, 64-bit unsigned integer. And we did go through, one of the big things was going through all of the transformers, and any transformer that adds an attribute, we put the right data type onto
Fantastic.
it as best we could. So I'm going off script here, but if I put down a length plot.
Hey. I don't think anyone expected you to stay on script, to be honest, Dale. I mean...
Since there isn't actually a script.
Yes, well, that as well.
Anyway, if you look at the length calculator here, that thing knows that it's going to be a real 64.
Perfect.
Which it didn't used to. If you go back to older FMEs, that was a fairly thankless job. There's 600 transformers to kind of go through them all and figure out what the data types were. It was a bit hard. So anyway, we got this Trello connector. We got these data types. What's next? I am going to go, and just for fun, I'm going to put a counter down, and the counter will say that its creation instance is a UN64. That's what it's thinking it could be. And I'm going to go ahead and run that to this point. And then I am going to put down what everybody's been waiting for, an attribute manager, an AM. I'm a good enough friend of it that I can just type AM. You know what I'm saying?
Excellent.
I am what I am. And as Popeye would say, that's all I am. So actually, he puts a Y in the front. I am what I am. I wonder if any of the customers have even heard of Popeye.
Well, maybe they thought it was René Descartes who said, I am what I am, or something like that. I'm sure he said something similar.
Yes. So when we pop up the attribute manager here, I see in faded colors what we think the data types are. And you know, Mark, we're not doing too good on all of these. The dreaded varchart 200, which is our way of saying we don't know.
Right, and that all came from Trello, though. So I mean, I don't know how Trello is at data typing stuff, but
it's not.
Yeah.
Underneath it was a JSON. Basically, it was a JSON record that we split apart. Yeah. And so here's where the fun begins. We go down here. We say import types from feature cache.
Ooh.
Because I had feature caching on. Are you ready? Let's do it. And now I get to choose which ones. I think we should always have these all turned on, but every time I've done this, I've hit select all. I've never not wanted this. And what we're going to do is we're going to do a best fit schema. Are you ready for the, and I should show folks, I won't, there. If you want, you can even fiddle with the rules around what kind of attribute types you want. So if you're old school and you want decimal 10,3, you could say explicit width and precision. New school is standard types. And with strings, you can say, I just don't even care about length, or I want best fit. And I like best fit. So here we go. Are you ready?
Wow. So this is scanning the data?
Yes, it's scanning the cache data. I'm going to hit the button.
Wow.
Kaboom. And this is now the best fit. And I left the creation instance in there because look what it's saying. I know you thought you had room for 64, but come on. We're only having like 5 here. Yeah. So don't waste space. And here you see all these tightly fit to the actual data.
Fantastic.
So anyway, that's what this is all about. And so now I have a good destination schema, and I can see that. Yeah.
I was going to say, I guess if you knew that you were going to read more features in the future, you could increase that from int 8 up to something else manually.
That therein lies the risk, because this is now fit like a glove to this exact data. And as was once said by a wise man, Mark, if the glove don't fit, you must acquit. And so if the glove don't fit here, you might end up quitting, because you're going to be trying to write data out that's too large, and it'll be truncated, and you'll probably have an unsatisfactory result. So there is, this tight fit is great if you know this is the actual and only data you're working with. Otherwise, you may need to ease off. Or we can go to Schema Scan, which I'll show that if I'm brave in a minute. So the other thing that is interesting inside the attribute manager is, of course, we can say, you know what? We don't want the creation instance. That's a lame thing. I shouldn't use that word, just not a good thing, a poor thing. And we will go to the top with this. And I'll put the count up top. And I'll, instead of calling it count, I'll maybe make it with a capital C. You can start to do some of this kind of work. That's nice in there. And now I can go and write this out. And I'm going to add everybody's favorite, Mark. I know you're a big Access fan.
Oh, I wouldn't be without it.
Yes. And by default, it says the table definition is going to be automatic. It pops this up. I'm going to call it cards, or is the name of the thing. And user attributes, there aren't any right now because I'm not connected. There comes the cards. I connect this up. Kaboom, there they are. If I pop this open, now I can see that these have the widths that we had set previously. And just to kind of drive home the point, because we're going old school today, I'm also going to do DBF. I'm picking something, so I'm going to call this just card like that. And again, automatic DBF, pop this up, it's cards, DBF. And let that go. And so now I have them both like that. And so I think the folks at home can probably see these.
Yep.
I'll just drag them up. And so here's where the magic comes. If I say, you know what, I don't like it called name, like with an underscore, that's poor. I'm going to go with capital name. And you know what, the list, this short URL, the board ID I don't care about, so I'm going to get rid of that too. And if I hit OK, watch everybody on the right-hand side what happens. See?
Mm-hmm. Fantastic.
As the song went, oh, ho, ho, it's magic. You know that song?
I think you and I need to update our cultural references sometime. I mean, I think we're...
Never believe it's not so. I think
okay,
that's what the song.
Yes.
So anyway, that's the thing. And if we go ahead just to prove the point, I can write these out. I can click on them. I can hit ask FME to show me what's really in there. This is reading it back from the DBF in this case. And there it is, looking good. And the same thing over here coming from MDB, and that's looking good too. So that's the demo I had. I will just throw in, if you're game for one more thing.
Well, I got a couple of questions. Is this a good time for a couple of questions?
Let's do it. Let's do it. This is a good break.
Okay, so let's see. Do you get a warning in the log file if you truncate an attribute during runtime? So say you set it in the Attribute Manager to 50 characters and data came through as 60. Any warnings?
Yes, the log will. Now, sadly, this depends on the writer in place. Some writers are more helpful than others.
Okay.
And there's actually an initiative at SAFE to do a bunch of things around writers and sort of, in quotes, bad data handling to make it more consistent. But in general, I've seen lots of warnings fly by like that.
Okay.
Our dream for the future is that writers have a rejected port, and you'd be able to say, be a bit meaner and say, hey, we're going to reject data, or you have an option, basically no truncation, because we don't, our purpose is to not lose people's data.
Yeah, I think the question was more referring to the Attribute Manager, because, but you're not really truncating the data there, are we? We're just setting a...
Dawn and I have a dream that we'd be able to put a right click on this afterwards and say, add an attribute, this guy here, let's see what we can find for the AV. If we could have an attribute validator with an option, and if the folks at home want to vote in, that you'd have a checkbox here or something that would say match to schema. Because we now know what the schema is supposed to be. We could do an AV on that before you even get here, and that would give you the best control of all.
That would be perfect, yeah. Or even just a checkbox in the Attribute Manager that says validate.
Yes. Then we'd have to put a rejected port on here, but we could. Yeah,
that'd be incredible. Yeah. I like that.
Yes.
Oh wow, lots of questions. What happens if you change the data set and ID gets 100 letters and it's set as 24? Yeah, I think we pretty much answered that. That's the writer.
The Attribute Manager won't do anything to it, because remember, the types I'm setting the Attribute Manager are sort of like recommendations for the writer downstream.
Yes.
The data is still going to be there. If we ever got rough with it and added a validate or impose or something like that on Attribute Manager, then we would change the data. But right now, nothing's going to happen. And if it was 100 characters, then the writers would start truncating, and then we would, if there's warnings or not. That's the best. That's the state of the art today.
Okay, but to be clear, if you set your writer in manual mode rather than automatic, and then made a change, it wouldn't get passed through at all, would it?
That's right. So let's do that just for fun. Let's flip the top guy to manual. Now those are hard-coded. Kaboom. These are now hard-coded, okay, with their types. I come back to Mr. Attribute Manager and I say, you know what? This really should have been a varchar of 204. Let's do that. Kaboom. So I forgot already which one I did. That one, ID.
Yes, ID.
ID, 24.
Right.
This one, 204.
Yeah. So
we can put it back. Kaboom, goes the dynamite.
So we're definitely saying that automatic is the way to go. I'm just trying to think. I had automatic for the people in my brain there. So
I think it's the way to go, unless you're writing to a database schema that someone else has defined. like then you got to stick with manual because
Right.
it's Mark's schema.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter what I'm doing in my workflow.
Yes.
Mark needs his stuff written out a certain way.
That's true. That's true. One other question was, is there any difference between data types if you're using a Mac instead of a Windows machine?
So someone might have noticed that I am on a Mac. So what you're going to find on a Mac is that, well, I don't know if I can actually say this with as much certainty. But in general on a Mac, the system encoding is UTF-8. So in general on a Mac, there's going to be a whole lot more UTF-8 flying around than there might be on a Windows computer.
Okay.
That said, we've kind of kicked most of our Windows FME running to be in UTF-8 mode. So you might see it anyway, although I don't know, if you read a CSV file on a Windows computer, you might see that with the Windows local encoding, or else will be UTF-8. I don't remember.
It generally doesn't default to UTF-8 on the
Okay.
CSV reader, I don't think.
Got it. So it's whatever the system, the true system encoding was. Yeah.
Or if there was no encoding, I think it defaults to the system.
Yes, that's what I think.
Sure. Yeah. Cool. Yeah, so folk are liking the ideas of you've been saying, so that's great. And okay, so one question right at the start that I missed. Is it faster to work with index and feature merge, for instance, 1 million features on a data type like int instead of date or long string? So
yes, FME will be happier if you have ints for us to merge with.
Okay.
But that said, with modern computing, it's I don't know that it would almost be measurable even. Like I know that underneath the code is a little bit cleaner, but what I've also learned is that these modern chips are so fast that those kind of optimizations don't matter as much. What matters is the overall volume of things. You know, if you have 50 million things, okay, that's just going to be heavy. But for most, even million level data sets, the difference won't be too substantial.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. So you got another demo you were about to show us?
Yes. If we want, I have 2 things up my sleeve.
Okay.
You know what? Maybe I'll come back to this.
Okay.
So I'll save this as some bad name like that, and I'll hop over. And the other one I was going to do was, I'll just hop in like this. So this was me sitting down. I just wanted to drive home this FME Brain Idea. This is an old random design file that I found. And what's interesting here is that there's absolutely no attributes. This is a CAD file. There were no user attributes to be had at all. So you'd think there's no data with these at all. But if I run this, it goes and does its thing. And I think layer 21, I thought was what I wanted. Oh, where don't I have my feature caches? I'm sad about this. Well, so there's something that I need to look at. So, okay, I'm going to
enabled, yeah.
I should be seeing, yeah, there they fill.
There we are.
Yeah. And here we go, and we can see these. Well, here's what this data was to begin with, and all of this, what we're working on actually right now for the next FME is separating out the exposed attributes from the unexposed ones. So you'll get 2 tables in here ultimately, so that whatever you see in your, right now, all of these are unexposed, but here's all the stuff that's known. And you can see when we hover on it, that's a 32-bit integer, you know, and so on. These all have their own types with them. And if I pop up the attribute manager, you can see, I'll just put a fresh one down. If I put a fresh one down of AM, so at this point, there are no attributes at all. And so I can go and, if I want to, I can import from the feature cache the whole here, and also at the same time give them good types. And kapow, there they are. And so now I've exposed them and given them types all at once. And you can kind of see, and it's unsurprising for this old CAD format, almost everything is unsigned 8-bit integers. And that's why DGN is so fast. So that's what I wanted to just show that. Again, CAD files is where we began, and that's where this idea of unexposed came from.
And I suppose the attribute manager lets you change the data type of format attributes, even if you really shouldn't, I guess.
Yes. So we could have gone in there. Actually, maybe I should bring that back. And here it is. And so if I want to, I can say, you know what? I actually think that I'm expecting that to be an int32.
Yeah.
And then now I've done that, and that'll be what would be reflected when we save this out later on.
Yeah. No, that's cool.
So that's all I want to
especially if you're copying that to an attribute of your own, then that's great to have flexibility.
When you copy, like an attribute copier does copy those storage types for you. We try very hard to manage that for you. And then, I don't know, any further questions before I do sort of the last little demo?
Can you use the attribute exposure to expose the attributes and type similar to the attribute manager?
I happen to know that top people are working on this right now. So down the AE, the attribute exposure right now, and I kind of drag into this, it'll give me the option to import from feature cache. Right now there isn't one, but it's not going to import types.
Okay.
But in FME 2023.1 it will.
Oh, so fantastic.
The type treatment will be put into that. So yes, great question from whoever asked that.
That's Sigbjorn in Norway. I think he's asking most of these questions. So.
He's up late.
Yep. Well, I tried to schedule these so it was early in New Zealand, but they could still attend, and late in Europe, but they could still attend.
Okay. Well, thanks for tuning in on the shoulder seasons there. The poor people in the Pacific time zone are having a lunch and learn, I think, Mark.
I think so. Yes. Maybe I've made no one happy instead of trying to make people mildly happy, but you never know.
That's central. Are you considered Central Time, Mark?
I am, yes.
The Central people, they're so pleased they can't control themselves.
That's true. It's perfect for me. I don't know what the problem would be.
So I'll just finish up by showing, what about, Mark hinted at this, what if we are writing something where the data types might be changing each time based on the input, and we aren't trying to write to the same table on the output. So in this case, I always want to produce the best fitting data, so I'm always writing a brand new DBF file. I'm not ever, and if each DBF file is different types than the other one, that's fine. We're trying to save space, and so I don't really want to hard code my types even in an attribute manager. Then we get into dynamic workflows, and there's wonderful tutorials on our SAFE website that you can follow along with. I had to follow along a little bit, and I learned to make this work. I have to put down an attribute creator that has these two guys in it. The setup, I'm going to call it Dyna cards as my output. And then I'm going to put down everybody's favorite, the Schema Scanner.
Woohoo.
There it is. And this is the same technology as what was going on in here when I hit the button, only this is going to happen at runtime as opposed to when I do it in here, that's design time. So that's another FME brain thing, is what's happening at design time versus what's happening at runtime.
Yeah.
Attribute Manager is design time, Schema Scanner is runtime. Attribute Manager stuff is fixed when we save the file. Schema Scanner, woohoo, anything goes. We don't know what's going to happen. So I pop down the Schema Scanner and we say, okay, we're happy with that. And I'll just for simplicity, I'm just going to go only with the, I didn't try this ahead of time, Mark. What could possibly go wrong? We'll go with writing this to...
that's a reader, not a writer you've got there.
Oh, you're right. I would have lots would have gone wrong there. There we go. This is better.
I should ask as well, I mean, if we put a feature writer down, does that have the same capabilities to... Yeah, okay. Yes. I figured it would, but for ourselves, we've been using FME so long, it's hard to get out of the habit of adding a writer.
So I'm going to name this Dyna cards, and I'm going with dynamic schema, and I'm going to get rid of this. There's no columns there, and there's Dyna cards, and then I just route the schema and the data to that thing, and I hit run, and now a best fit schema is being produced and being output to here. And if I have any luck at all, I have to pop this up and I have to read it. Yes, that seems fine. Maybe I can't do it that way. I will, yeah, but that's right. Dynamic doesn't work as well
No, it
with that
probably
preview
would.
because it doesn't know. So if I have to fire up my friend, the data inspector,
Yeah.
and I'm going to go and, yeah, that's what it's trying to read, and that's the problem. So I'm going to have to open DBF. Where is it? Dynacards. I think that's what I called it.
Right. That's one of the differences between design time and runtime that FME just can't do, and it's not really clear why until you start and sit and think about it. Oh yeah, it doesn't.
So this is what we ended up writing out. So, and it has a lot of other columns to it because it did a scan of the whole thing. And so now, if you really are going to do this, you end up saying, all right, I'm going to tell the Schema Scanner, I don't want you to write any attributes that contain FME underscore in them.
Right.
Don't scan those. And if I rerun this whole thing, with any luck, I hop back to my data inspector, I say refresh, and they're gone. And so you kind of have to do some attribute removing. If I don't like the creation and the count, I could remove those before I go into the scanner, but it will basically write out everything, and there's no chance of any data truncation. So that's why I would go the dynamic route. It's a little more scary. That's been in FME for at least 1.5 years or 2 years almost.
It has. If folk want to find out more info, we did one of these presentations last year was on the Schema Scanner. So just look on my YouTube channel for FME Evangelist, and you can find it there.
The main reason I included is I wanted to drive home the FME brain difference. Again, the Schema Scanner, it's making its decisions as the data goes by. It's able to adjust to whatever input you throw at it. And then, so that's very powerful, but then you have to you don't have as much control on the output. Like for example, with the Schema Scanner, I can't make the count column come first.
Right.
I don't have that. I mean, with enormous gymnastics, I maybe could, but I'd have to fiddle with this. I could hit this button to see the schema feature. Here is the actual schema feature. And I could say, you know what? I'd have to do, list dynamics to move count from being number 7 to number 0 and shift everything down. That sort of scares me, Mark.
And we don't have that capability to pop something off the bottom to the top.
So. No, but and folks would want. There is actually an idea out there to try to do more with Schema Scanner.
Yeah.
With list attributes and the Schema Scanner. We may do that, a schema manipulator transformer that would understand these strange beasts called schema features. Yes. But I think with that, Mark, I'm more or less talked out. Is there any more?
Oh yeah, plenty of questions. And I do love the Schema Scanner, the way you sends the schema out, but you can still send that to the writer, and it's like a feature that doesn't get written, just defined. It's a logical way of doing it. But,
yeah, the thing that I found when I was doing my hours and hours of prep before this was that you do have to make sure that these two attributes are there with the name of the table you want.
Yes.
Ahead of going into this.
Exactly.
And then over in here, it talks about that it's going to get the table name from one of those attributes. So you kind of have to have all that lined up so that it connects up properly. But hey, once you do it,
it works pretty well. Yeah. One question I had was the data type setting option. Does it appear on any other transformers in the Attribute Manager? I'm sure it must be on an attribute creator.
Does it appear yet?
I don't know. That's what I'm wondering.
It's actually, I think it is in the AC.
That's what I thought. Yeah.
Oh, no shortcut for the AC for this guy. Attribute creator. Let's pop him in just for fun. Yes.
Yes, data type.
And here's where there's some controversy, because if I type and I say, you know what, Dale, that's an int.
And that's where you need the data validator button. Yeah.
There's people on the 10th floor that don't like this. I also think that if I type BBBB, this should automatically fill in and say char 4.
Right.
So we don't need artificial intelligence for that, Mark.
No, I think just plain normal intelligence would do that. Let's have a look. So a couple of questions. One was, I'm not sure if it's even sort of the same topic, but is there a way to dynamically expose attributes in a Python caller?
No, you can't expose them to the canvas. The canvas is not a like expose
Right,
and dynamic are words that can't be used in the same sense. Basically. So
But
you can create them in a Python caller, and then you can dynamically create them. But then your only way is a schema scanner. So what do I mean? I mean, if I was in a Python caller and I wanted to make an attribute that is named after today's date, that means every day I run it, I'm going to get a new attribute out.
Yeah.
A static schema on an attribute manager or even an automatic or manual aren't going to do it. A schema scanner one would.
Yeah. I think that goes back to what we were talking about, the difference between design time and runtime. And some things you just can't do that. But I think in the Python caller, there is a way to expose attributes from the schema, from a cache.
Well, yes, but those ones, again, we're assuming you're always creating the same ones.
Yes, they've already been created, yeah. So,
yeah. There's actually, it's still on the roadmap that if you hit that, well, let's just show the folks at home. If I type Python caller, go, and down here it's attributes to expose, and I have ... Right now, the import of this is not as robust as I'd like because I can't actually import them from cache in here.
Okay.
And I would like to be able to import them and fix their types right in here so that you would have this whole unit be nicely contained.
That makes sense. Let's see. Schema Scanner Transform has been great. That was a good addition. Would it work to merge the schema to each feature one-to-one instead of sending the schema feature from the Schema Scanner? And I think that's right. You could merge it onto each feature and it would still work.
I think you can.
I don't know.
I don't remember how that works. I think you have to tell.
Yeah, I think under the dynamic mode,
there's a way to do that.
Yeah.
Mostly, I would say don't do that because there's no need to. But you may find yourself in a corner where that's helpful, and you can. But by default, it's a little bit hard to get that merged. You'd have to do sort of an unconditional feature merge or something.
You would, yeah. But it could be done. But I think it's better. Because I think that's how it used to be. You used to have to add it to every feature, but this is way better, right? In my opinion, anyway. So, cool. So if you wrote only the schema to a geodatabase writer, would you get any output, or like a schema and no features? That's an interesting one.
Wow.
I'm putting you on the spot, but I'm not assuming you know the answer to that one because that will be a weird scenario, but it will be interesting.
People have asked for that, and that would be a brilliant thing if we would do that. I would be scared to promise that we would, but this is a dream, and it's quite high on the lists here to basically create tables without requiring at least one record to be written.
Yeah.
And I doubt that the dynamic would do it, knowing what I kind of know about how FME works. My hunch is it would not work.
Yeah.
Because our whole framework basically was set up that we don't bother firing things up until there's actually one record of real data to write. And we thought this was a brilliant thing that we don't create unneeded empty tables. But for some set of people, they would like the full schema created, and then even if there's no data. So I feel that pain. It's, here's hoping there's a good solid FME 2025 where we can do that.
Yeah. We're getting right down into the nitty-gritty with some of these questions. So, but if you've got multiple features coming out of the schema scanner with different schemas, does the writer need all the schemas before it gets any features? I don't know that it does.
No, it just needs the schemas for each one, but the schema scanner is actually a blocking transformer anyway.
Yeah.
Its contract is that it's going to hold everything and send the schemas out first, and then it will send the output. second,
Yes.
which is the data. We really should change that word output to be just data.
Yeah.
But
that makes sense. Well, I think that's all of the questions we've got, unless I've missed any.
Well, I just want to thank everybody for tuning in, and
yeah, we had about 10 to 12 viewers, and again, this is going on to YouTube as well, so lots of
there's
people.
going to be thousands and thousands of views on YouTube, I think.
Yes, I think so too, and plenty more of these presentations. I'm going to try and do one every Thursday, so we'll see how that goes. But,
all right.
Yeah, well, thank you, Dale. It's great having you on. Everyone else, thank you for joining us today. It's been an absolute blast to chat about data types and everything. So please do.
It's a gripping topic.
It is, yeah. So yeah, do tune in same time next week, and we're talking about something else that I can't remember offhand, but it will be equally interesting.
Are we saying same bat time, same bat channel?
Absolutely, yeah.
Continue our references to things from before 1970.
Yes. So I will. I'm going to end the stream for everyone. So thanks, folks, and
all right.
goodbye.
Thanks for tuning in, folks.
Thanks, folks.